Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye olahudi sammyao sanbutoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahati samya sambuddhase.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture. We are back. It is a Sunday afternoon here in Queensland, 17th of September. It is the 16th of September in California. Glad that you're here with us today. We're going to be looking into the Flower Garland Sutra. This is our version of a formal sutra lecture, so we have protocol that we go through at the start to get everything going, as they say, rufa, according to Dharma. So we'll continue with that in just a sec. We've just had the Dharma request, and I appreciate that for Sam for doing the request. Also, as we get started, I wanted to appreciate as well all the kind hearts and hands that are helping put this lecture online. We have, here I'm going to stop sharing here. There we go. Okay, there we are. We have technological help here in the Gold Coast. We've got friends. You should see our Buddha Hall here. It definitely looks like the Starship Enterprise. Does that still relate? That was the original Star Trek. We look like we're in the control cabin of an airliner. And the result of that is a translation going out in Mandarin of the words that I'm speaking in English to probably not quite 100 people over the Chinese-speaking world, which includes probably 50 different places in China, and then Hong Kong, and then Taiwan, and then Singapore, and Malaysia, and then there's another team of hardworking volunteers who are translating my words spoken in English into Vietnamese. That's going out. Usually there's 30-some folks who are listening in Vietnamese, and that team is spread from San Francisco to Texas. One group is in France. So yesterday, when I gave my lecture, we have another series going, and Ben has asked that I kindly list all the different ways that people can hear the Dharma. So on Friday mornings here in Queensland, which is Saturday mornings, which is Friday afternoon in California, I have another series of Dharma talks going. And the person who did the Dharma request yesterday was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. She requested in English, not in Portuguese, but we're working on Portuguese. So this is truly a global effort. That same series has been requested in the past by friends from Hanoi, Vietnam, from St. Petersburg, Florida. So we are taking advantage of the benefits that technology offers. So that was the Dharma request, and appreciation again to all the friends who are making this possible. We're going to share the screen again and go into the next part of our protocols for getting the Sutra lecture underway, which is called an invocation. And we do this with music. And what what we're doing is we're inviting the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garland Assembly to come here, which is southeastern Queensland, and also to come wherever you are listening. Today's lecture is going to talk about how Bodhisattvas could potentially do that. You wonder, what do they have? A single portal broadband access with infinite bandwidth? Is that the way they do it? Or is it done through something much more organic, much more analog? Don't know that answer, but I know that if we're sincere, when we do this chanting and really invite the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the Dharma protectors, as they say, the Tianlong Babu, the gods, the dragons, and the Eightfold Pantheon, people, do I see them? I don't see them, but people report that having been to one of these sutra lectures where things are done the traditional way, they come out feeling somehow lighter, like they left something behind in the way of shadows and darkness, and they feel refreshed. So could that be the actual analog experience of inviting the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas? Maybe so. But included in that analog experience is getting your instrument in tune. No excuse. Here we go. Yeah. All right, there it is. Ah. Here we are. Furthermore, we move on through the places where we lecture. We respectfully acknowledge the Kombu-Meri people of the Ugambi language region as traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where this monastery is located. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded, which in Chinese says, 我们恭敬地承认有冈贝语族的昆布摩里人，是我们寺院所在地的传统叙述者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长老们致敬，并且向所有从未被放弃主权的第一民族的原住民致敬。All right. bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sound that everywhere fills the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000劫内，佛法扬万亿国中，共训起法界和平，利益报他能厚德。And there you have it. Okay, we have adapted that traditional way of starting a sutra lecture to the needs of our multicultural, pluralistic, multi-language world. So you get to learn a little Chinese along with your sutra lecture. Let me tell you where we are. We're in the middle of a sutra. It's called the Flower Garland, Hua Yan Jing it's called. And we were calculating there might be, as far as I know, fewer than 6 places in the world where the Flower Garland Sutra is regularly opened up and explored. If you say, how many places does that take place in English? Probably 2, and here's one of them. And the other one is City of 10,000 Buddhas, back in California. The reason for this is our teacher, Master Xuan Hua, who insisted that we spend 90 minutes of every day, twice on Sunday, twice on Saturday and Sunday, opening up Buddhist sutras and finding out what they say. In other words, letting the Buddha's voice be heard in English. And he spoke in Chinese, and we, the next generation, we disciples, translated it into English. That has now gone on to include half a dozen languages, from Vietnamese to Polish to Spanish to French to Bahasa, Malaysia, Indonesian, and so forth. In other words, he made that a priority. He said, we're going to be doing this. This is what I want to do as I bring Buddhism to the West. Now, we've been doing this. He first began teaching Westerners, teaching in San Francisco to anyone who came in public lectures on a regular basis in 1968, 69. So that's 50 years. And it takes a while for us to learn Chinese so that we can accurately represent what Master Hua is saying. And then it takes an even longer time to actually digest the contents of the Buddha's teaching. When it comes to the sutras, the Buddha was speaking directly to the wisdom part of the mind. How well developed was that wisdom part? Was it a seed? Was it a sprout? Was it a sturdy stalk with branches and leaves? Was it a bloom or a blossom or a fruit? People hear that wisdom at different stages. Definitely, since Buddhas are made from people, not from aliens or divinities or celestial beings. So it has to be that the things he says correspond to something inside us already, something we already possess. But it's an ongoing, it's a growing, organic thing. It's not static. So it's kind of like water that hits a seed and puts out a sprout, or water that nourishes a sturdy plant. This particular sutra that we're investigating is the one the Buddha spoke first immediately upon his awakening. We're talking about the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, who 2,500 years ago made it a priority to wake up before he wanted it in place of the things he could have been doing. He could have been enjoying his life, you know. He was definitely born into blessings. He had all the money, he had all the power, he had all the stuff, he had armies, he had a wife. Hard to imagine anything more that he might have wanted. All that was part of being a prince of India, and yet he set it aside. He was affluent to the ultimate point, and he chose voluntary poverty and hardship in order to find out an answer to the question, where did I come from, and what are my choices as my life closes, as my life ends? Are there any whatsoever, or do you just go when it's time? Those are the questions that motivated him to set aside all of that good stuff that the world tells us is what it's all about, in favor of the word that we use as cultivation. So the Buddha explained what he discovered immediately upon awakening under the Bodhi tree, and that wisdom was collected as the Avatamsaka, the Flower Adornment Sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra. And it's not politically correct, it's not watered down, it's not pasteurized, homogenized. It's, you could say, the milk straight from the cow. There are other texts that followed later that were, in fact, very expedient, where the Buddha, I want to say dumbed it, he didn't dumb it down, he aimed it at a different audience. The audience for this sutra was Bodhisattvas and Devas, who already had a clue. So the language the Buddha uses is real Dharma code language. And that's, of course, what we encounter when we try to translate it, when we try to make sense of it. So back to my original story, saying that we spent time learning Chinese, then we spend a longer time learning Dharma. And that is an ongoing evolutionary process. So 50 years after Master Hua first started explaining this, and as he did for 30 of those 50 years, he said, I really want you to understand this stuff. This is the real thing. This is the real teaching of the Buddha. You need this the way you need to polish a mirror before you're going to get a good reflection. Before you can see your face in a mirror, you have to make sure the mirror is straight and polished. So cultivate, and then open the sutras, read them, translate them, decorate them, illustrate them, sing them, put it in your pocket and walk with it, and think about it. You know. So he was serious. Master Hua really did want us to investigate the Buddha's sutras. So for folks who say, oh yeah, Buddhism, you meditate a lot, right? Mindfulness. You're not wrong, but that's not the whole story. That's a portion of the process of learning Buddhism. And so here we are in Australia, here we are in California, here we are online globally, engaged in that process. And it's very collegial. We do it together. When we translate in committee. There are people who will tell you that's impossible. They say when you translate in a committee, you get what's called a camel leopard. Half camel, half leopard, something that doesn't exist anywhere else, something that nobody wants. 不中不西，南腔北调的佛法. You know, Buddhism that's not north, not south, not east, not west. It's hybrid. Well, yeah, but that's not our experience. There's something about translating the Buddha's wisdom when we're humble enough to say, wisdom is a plant in the garden. It grows according to conditions. And there are no experts until you become a Buddha, and then you're the expert. Before then, we're all learning. We're all reducing the darkness in the mind, the coverings of the mind, so that we can understand it better. Okay, so back to where we are. We're in the Flower Garland Sutra. We're in the last chapter, chapter 39. It's the biggest of the chapter of 40 chapters. It's 1/4 of the entire sutra is a single chapter. So 38 chapters make up 3/4 of the sutra. One chapter makes up the last quarter. It's a long, long, epic story. It's a pilgrimage, and the pilgrim is a monk called Sudhana. He's a young man. He's full of blessings. His name translates as good and wealthy, or wholesome wealth. There are conditions that led to that name, but he is picked out by a bodhisattva whose name is Manjushri, who, if I were to turn my computer, there's Manjushri Bodhisattva, his image right there on the altar. The other one is Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Let's see, that's Manjushri with the Rui in his hands. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva is over here with the lotus. So Manjushri Bodhisattva picks out Sudhana and says, you're the one. You can become a Buddha in this lifetime. Get my horizon straight there on the screen. Okay, there we go. So, are we good? Did the connection, is it still there? Okay. Looks good. Niga? The projector got unplugged? Oh, you guys. Here we go. I was looking only at YouTube. All right. Yes. Hooray. We're back. Zoom is still good. Okay. So he says, Sudhana, you're the one. You can do it. And the way you're going to do it, the way you're going to get enlightened in this lifetime and become a Buddha, is you have to go find a teacher. And he sends him off to the south. He says, go south. You're going to find a monk, he said, whose name is Duyun, Cloud of Virtue, and go and ask him 2 questions. Ask him, how do I practice the Bodhisattva practices? How do I walk the Bodhisattva path? Ask him those 2 questions. He'll answer. And then do what he says. So go to see him, bow to him, make offerings and pay respects, and then ask for Dharma. So Sudhana does that, and sure enough, interestingly, the monk, in reply, asks him 2 questions back. 1 question back. He says, good man, have you made the great resolve for Bodhi? 善男子如依发大菩提心法, he says. And Sudhana goes, yeah, I have. Yeah, I did, long time ago. So Bhikshu Cloud of Virtue goes, good stuff. All right, well here, let me tell you what I know. And so he does, and Sudhana is overjoyed. And the sutra is really clear about the effect of hearing the Dharma on this young man. It says he jumps for joy, sometimes he cries, he circles around the teacher with his palms and circles to the right and bows to him and vows to put into practice the method of the practices that he's just learned. And then, surprisingly, the teacher says, however, what you heard from me is only a part of the story. He said, if you really want to know the answer to your 2 questions, you have to go south and look for a teacher whose name is, and he gives him the name of the next teacher, and ask him your 2 questions. And Sudhana, as the sutra reports, he says, you mean I have to leave you? Yeah. He said, he really knows the answer, so go ask him. So he sends him off to the south. Sudhana bows to him, says thank you, and sadly leaves his teacher, goes to the next one. And this process happens 52 times. That's why the chapter is so long. 52 different teachers, sometimes 53, because one of the visits there's twins who he asks. And he gets 53 answers. And the last 3 are really telling, because number 50, 51, 52, 50. is the Bodhisattva Maitreya. And at the 50th visit, when he sees the Bodhisattva Maitreya at a place called the Pilujana Bauloga, the Vairochana's magnificent pagoda, Vairochana Buddha's pagoda. At that visit, Manjushri says, "Here, step inside. That'll answer your questions." And he snaps his fingers, and the door to this pagoda opens. Sudhana goes inside and gets enlightened. That's the culmination of his search, and it took him years and years to, and the sutra charts him over many, many years. In between certain teachers, it takes 12 years to go in between a couple of the teachers. So he has slowly gathered all of this wisdom, and he has, interestingly enough, this is something that people wouldn't imagine if they didn't look into it. Of these 53 teachers, 21 of them are women. He goes to meet, he learns the Dharma from 21 different female teachers. So nearly half of the teachers are women. And I've looked into and done comparative studies of what he learns from the different genders and the different kinds of teachers. The teachers include such things as a ship's captain, a courtesan, 2 incense makers, a Brahmin, one teacher who doesn't answer him, pays no attention to him whatsoever, just sits in meditation. Sudhana says, "Well, I got a lot from him." So lots of monks, nuns, maidens. He goes to see 10 spirits of the night. Those 10 spirits of the night-ruling spirits are all female. And the things they impart to him are incredible. They're past stories of when they first made the Bodhi resolve. He goes to visit the Buddha's mother, Lady Maya. And in these visits to particularly the female they're called good and wise advisors, Kalyana Mitra. As he meets them, his compassion opens as well. And the sutra is very specific that in order to get enlightened, you need both wisdom and compassion. You need both wisdom and blessings. So that's the story. Sudhana does all of the above, and it's fascinating to watch the Mahayana Buddhism's epic literature. This is truly an epic, like Rime of the Ancient Mariner, like Gilgamesh, some people say, like Don Quixote, all of the great epic stories of these great heroes that carry the evolution of culture on their back. Sudhana is one of them. People don't know that Mahayana Buddhism has epic literature like this, because why? If it weren't for Master Hua, the Avatamsaka Sutra would still be there in the glass bookcase in the collection of 1,600 different Mahayana Sutras in the 100-volume Buddhist canon, but who would think to open it up? People say, "Oh, that sutra is all philosophy. No, it's a lot full of Sanskrit, can't understand it. Too many technical terms, too lofty, your wisdom can't understand it." And this pilgrimage there are philosophical elements in it. It is not philosophy. It's an adventure. It's a spiritual adventure. And the young man is wounded in the process. He's terrified by some of the teachers he meets. He meets one teacher who's a Brahmin, and the Brahmin subjects his body to the 5 fires every day. So among the practices the Brahmin has includes climbing up a tree of knives and jumping into a pot of boiling oil. And Sudhana sees this, and the teacher tells him to do it, and Sudhana goes, this must be a demon. He's here to destroy me. I'm not going to do it. And the devas come down. The devas from all the different heavens come down, including the Brahma heaven, and they say, "Oh, Do not mistake this teacher. He is truly a good and wise advisor. He is only here to help you answer your question, how to cultivate Bodhisattva practices, how to walk the Bodhisattva path. So he is your good advisor. Do not fear. So Sudhana goes, gulp. He scrambles up the tree of knives and jumps into the pot of boiling oil and says, strange, he said, I feel so cool and refreshed. Oh, this is a good advisor. And all the devas go, whew, that was close. He almost quit. So halfway. So then he meets teachers who absolutely delight him. So we left you at Maitreya. He wakes up in Vairochana's pagoda, but that's not the end of the story. He comes out and he still has two more teachers, number 51 and 52. 51 is, interestingly enough, Manjushri, Bodhisattva, the teacher who initiated him into the pilgrimage, who set him on the path. We're going to meet Manjushri in just a few lectures here. He hasn't shown up yet. So that's number 51. And then number 52 is the final teacher. He's the one who answers the questions in so many words. Maitreya showed, he didn't tell. He gets to the last teacher, Samantabhadra, Bodhisattva. Samantabhadra both shows and tells. And he explains that, which is fascinating. I don't think, maybe we should write about this. The idea that as a Buddha, Sudhana has accomplished Buddhahood, but clearly his work is beginning. It's not the end. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva says, good man, he said, here's how you benefit limitless living beings. And he tells him 10 things to do. His answer to the two questions, how do I 如何修菩萨道, 如何修菩萨行, 如何行菩萨道? Those two questions, cultivating and walking the path. The answer comes back in 10 things, and they include things that we do every single day in the monastery. It's not esoteric. It's bowing, praising, making offerings, repenting, rejoicing in others' merit, requesting the Dharma that we just did just here, asking Buddhas to stay in the world and not enter nirvana, learning from the Buddhas, according with living beings' abilities, and then transferring merit. Those 10 things are pretty much make up the program of every day in the monastery. So interesting, right? That's our story. So where are we now in our chapter? We're just at the beginning. So Manjushri hasn't shown up yet to select Sudhana. Sudhana has not shown up yet either. That's coming. We're almost there. This chapter has a long prelude, and we're in the prelude part where the Buddha is praising bodhisattvas. And today, once we get going here in our text, we're going to point out the what's ahead. Manjushri is just about to show up. So let me share my screen. And here we go. Invite you all to read with me if you care to do so. I'm going to start with 觉了佛地 right here. If you can't read the characters, you're welcome to read the Romanized sounds with English ABC, with ABCs and tone marks. Then we'll go read the English. Let's see here. Study and cultivate. Let's see here. Never forget what they study and cultivate. Okay, down to here. Alrighty, here we go. 觉了佛地生生之趣， 以无尽句说甚深意，于一句中演说一切修多罗海，豁大智慧陀罗尼山，犯所受持永勿忘失。Okay, we'll stop there, right there. Okay. Together, they clearly understand the level of a Buddha and its profound implications. With flowing phrases, they speak profound principles, and within each phrase, they expound an ocean of sutras. They attain the Dharani body of great wisdom, so they never forget what they study and cultivate. Okay. So, notice that they are not Buddhas. These are bodhisattvas. These are the Buddha's words before he explains the text. And he's talking about bodhisattvas. And he says they understand the level of the Buddha. They are not yet Buddhas. They are future Buddhas. And its profound implications, the things that means for the Buddha and for the beings whom he teaches. With flowing phrases, they speak profound principles. Within each phrase, they expound an ocean of sutras. When you get to a certain point of purity in your mind, language transforms. Language is very different. So we've, here at the Gold Coast Dharma Realm, we just finished a previous chapter called the 10 Stages, the 10 Grounds, Shi Di Ping. And in the 9th stage, the 9th ground, there is a lot of talk about Toloni, Dharani. They attain the Dharani body of great wisdom, so they never forget what they study and cultivate. And in that chapter, when they're talking about Dharani, it's all about this amazing ability that the mind has to communicate. I'm not going to review it because it's really long, but it's very satisfying because it's long. I should say when I read that description of what the mind is capable of in terms of language and symbol, immediately what came to my mind was Carl Jung, the Swiss psychotherapist and psychiatrist, one of the founders of modern analytic psychiatry. Carl Jung talked about collective unconscious, and he was conjecture, he was speculating, because it's at this level of the mind, it's really hard to get research data, and he was just in the dawn of exploring the mind. But Jung was talking about how there is a level of mind shared by all beings, shared by all humans, let's say, regardless of language base, culture, socioeconomic status, how much money you have, where you live, where you grew up. There are things in the mind that everybody has that can be activated or not. And he talked about them. He talked about archetypes. And he talked about things like the shadow. And he talked about these archetypes that grow, like the crone and the witch and the hero, and things that every culture, whether they're painting it on the wall of a cave in prehistoric France, or whether they're describing it in poetry in Persia, or whether it's inscribed in Chinese characters from 5,000 years ago, there are certain archetypes that return, certain patterns that are coded deep within the human mind. And so fascinating, right? And as I say, it's with Jung, because it was so early and so fresh, it's pretty much, there's no evidence to back it up. If you're looking for a double-blind survey that's going to prove it, well, there was premature at that point. But Jung was not wrong in saying that there are patterns that resonate deeply. For example, humor. Just people love to laugh. Why? What a magical, amazing thing it is to have something funny that when you do it without knowing language of a new culture, a new tribe, a new civilization, those people will laugh the same. Pantomime, for example, pantomime. We grew up with Marcel Marceau, remember Marcel Marceau? And his favorite character, Bip. And Marcel Marceau had he had a top hat, he had a flower, and he had suspenders and a black striped shirt. He was French. And he was among the first to bring pantomime to a wider global audience. And Bip was often very sad. And then he would do something magical, like he could take a balloon, blow up a balloon, and the balloon would carry him off into the stratosphere. The balloon would he would be pulled off his feet by the balloon. And there's no balloon, it was all pantomime. And audiences worldwide, young, old, east, west, would just delight in watching Marcel Marceau. And this is, people would be amazed that this was shared in common. So one of the, along with humor, this magical thing where certain things are funny and you know it, and then that's not funny, they didn't laugh. And yet someone else does it, it's funny, right? Why is that? So because my answer to that would be because there are certain principles, that's the Buddhist language, 道理. There are certain principles in the Tao, kind of like striations in the jade. If you look at a piece of fine jade, there are lines that go through it. They're natural. Our minds are the same, that we have these natural striations and principles that when they're activated, when they're touched, when they're embodied, when you see someone, hear someone explain it, it resonates inside of you because they're already there. So the Buddha is a person who cleared away the stuff on top of those principles, and he was able to activate them and see them clearly without distortion, without delusion, without fear, without confusion. So that is why Bodhisattvas, in touch with that, with flowing phrases, speak profound principles, and with each phrase, they expound an ocean of sutras, and we get it. We understand it. If you have the Dharani body of great wisdom, so that they never forget what they study and cultivate. One of the functions of having that available to you is your memory is great memory. You don't forget stuff. So look at what else. What else happens when your mind is clear and quiet? 无量, let's see here. 一念能益无量劫世，一念悉知三世一切诸众生智，恒以一切陀罗尼门，演说无边诸佛法海，常转不退清净法轮，令诸众生皆生智慧. In one thought, they can recollect the events of measureless eons. They possess the wisdom that in a single thought can know all beings throughout the 3 periods of time. They always use the doors of Dharani to teach the boundless oceans of Buddha Dharmas, constantly turning the non-retreating, pure Dharma wheel so that all beings bring forth wisdom. Right. Now, if you insist that it's got to be knowledge known to science, then this will be, you can dismiss it as nonsense, or the Buddha was smoking something, or, But if you suspend that insistence that it has to conform to science's ability to measure, understanding that, what do they say, 70% of the scientists who ever lived are still alive, because science, as we know it now, reductionistic science, empirical science that insists that everything has to be measured and published and peer-reviewed, well, then that's kind of a narrow view. If instead we say science makes giant contributions and we can't do without it, but the mind is not limited to language and thought. The deep mind that the Buddha experienced in his meditation that is available to us in these sutras is not, it goes beyond the realm of language and thought, so that in one thought they can remember measureless eons of events. Well, I can't, but that doesn't mean the Buddha's mind inherent in me cannot. They possess the wisdom that in one thought can know all beings in the 3 periods of time. They use the doors of Dharani, that speech ability from the polished archetypes of the mind, to teach the boundless oceans of Buddha Dharmas, constantly turning the non-retreating pure Dharma wheel so that all beings bring forth wisdom. Here's the image of a Dharma wheel, which is, that pops up. In fact, if you look at Wikipedia and you go to the article on Buddhism, there will be a symbol that is used to refer to all of Buddhism, all 2,500 years of Buddhism. It's a wheel. It's a Dharma wheel, 8 spokes in it. So the Buddha often described the Dharma teachings that he did as turning the wheel of Dharma. In our Mahayana tradition, it'd probably be a lotus for the Bodhisattva. But Buddhism as a whole is the Dharma wheel. It doesn't retreat, it is pure, and it allows everybody to bring forth wisdom. Okay, to get to where I want to be, we need to do another couple paragraphs. Okay, let's see here. Hold on. Okay, let's do the entire paragraph. You can practice your Mandarin. Here we go. Ready? 得佛境界智慧光明，入于善见神深三昧，入一切法无障碍际，于一切法圣之自在，一切境界清净庄严，普入十方一切法界，随其方所弥不闲置，一一尘中现成正觉，于无色性现一切色，于一切放普入一放。All right, well done. Ready? They attain the Buddha's states, attain his wisdom light, and master the profound samadhi of wholesome views. They realize the unobstructed states of Dharma and use supreme wisdom and self-mastery when teaching. The states they experience are pure and adorned. They travel to and embody all Dharma realms of the 10 directions without exception, regardless of their direction and location. They appear within every dust particle to realize right awakening. They manifest every body right within the nature that is free from forms. They can enter one direction from many directions. Oh boy, that's out there, right? To do these things, bodhisattvas have to have mastery over time and space. They have to master all elements. There's a new Pixar film about elements called Elemental, very interesting. Earth, air, fire, and water. So you don't have to go far to reach this. You just have to come back into your body from the talking head that is so much of modern life, and say, yeah, the solid parts, the warm parts, the liquid parts, the spaces, that's my body. I'm using one. We're borrowing a body. And sadly, we have to return it at some point. We will all recycle our bodies at some point. Meanwhile, before we do that, let's use this subtle balance of earth, air, fire, and water. What is health but a hugely dynamic, moving balance of earth, air, fire, and water? Change one too quickly and you get sick. Bring it back to the middle, and health returns. So this is clearly one of the things that bodhisattvas have mastered, how Through their meditation, through simply being in the body. Meditation is a profoundly embodied, physical, grounded experience. So by doing that and using the Dharma as your template, as your kind of your program, you can ultimately attain the Buddha states, the wisdom light, and enter samadhi. You can realize unobstructed states of Dharma, and then teach the rest of us, with supreme wisdom and self-mastery. These states are pure and adorned. They travel to and embody the Dharma realms of the 10 directions, no exception, no matter where they are. So this is like, what's going on? Bodhisattvas in meditation can leave their bodies and go to where the Buddhas are to study with them. The sutras describe it. It's beyond my imagination, but I'm interested. I'd like to learn more. They appear in dust particles, so big and small, no obstruction. They wake up in the dust particles. Then they make their bodies appear within a nature that is free from physicality. One direction is a doorway to every direction. So like Guanyin Bodhisattva has the Pu Manpin, the universal doorway chapter. All right. That's the end of the list that we've been looking at for 3 weeks now. Let's do the last paragraph. This is a summary. Here we go. We're ready. 起诸菩萨具如是等无边福智功德之藏，常为诸佛之所成叹，种种言辞说其功德，不能令尽，米不闲在十多林中，深入如来功德大海，喜见于佛光明所照。The Buddhas constantly praise and extol these bodhisattvas who are replete with the above treasury of boundless blessings, wisdom, and qualities. The Buddhas explain the bodhisattvas' excellent virtues in many languages and expressions. Even they cannot finish speaking of them. These bodhisattvas, without exception, were all present in the Jeta Grove. They were deeply immersed in the thus come one's ocean of virtues. They could see the Buddha's light shining upon them. All righty. That's the end of a passage. So the Buddha announced he was going to speak. The bodhisattvas arrived. They made offerings. They each took a seat in all of the 10 directions, and then one by one came forward to praise the Buddha, or wisdom, or cultivation, or the Dharma. They weren't, sucking up to the Buddha by trying to improve their standing with the Buddha. That was not part of it. Instead, they talked about how good it was to get beyond delusion, how light and yourself it feels to no longer have fear in your life, to be fearless, how good that feels. They talked about the joy of being able to help others without confusion, without mistakes. Every time they wanted to help somebody, they were able to. It didn't backfire. It didn't come to nothing, right? The bodhisattvas praised that. They said how wonderful that is as they were there. Okay, they were finished. Then the Buddha, there were other things that happened. 5,000 people stood up and left because they felt left out. The sutra spent time on that experience. And then the Buddha starts to praise them. And this has been, as it says, the Buddhas praise and extol their treasury of blessings, wisdom, and qualities, their virtue. In Chinese, it was 无边福智功德之藏. So these three things, okay, I want to take just a minute there. When I got to Gold Mountain Monastery, it was 1971, first time. I had come from the world of Zen, and I had done a lot of reading in what was available at the time, the various books, D.T. Suzuki, Alan Watts, and Philip Kapleau, and the poetry of the Beatniks, Gary Snyder, and Philip Whalen, people who'd experienced Zen in Japan. And what I understood was I wanted to get enlightened. I wanted to experience Satori and Kensho. I had no idea what they were, but being trained in the marketplace of Middle American values, I knew that was something to get. I wanted it. And so enlightenment was just like, ooh, that was the goal, that was the prize. And what was enlightenment? Kensho, I don't know, Satori. All of the stories were about striving for that. And Zen masters had it, and I didn't, and I wanted it. So when I finally got to Gold Mountain in '71, Master Hsuan, who clearly knew what this was, he had a clue. He was not confused about this, about what was the goal of cultivation. He didn't talk about enlightenment very much. During Chan sessions, yes, he would urge us. He would use the traditional language. Who's going to get enlightened first? You know, if you don't get enlightened in the next 7 days, we're going to nail your knees to the bench and keep you here until you wake up. And I said, well, if you die, we'll just stuff you under the bench. It's cold in here. We'll thaw you out in spring, he said. So there was that kind of talk. It's tough Chan macho talk. But during the teachings that he would do when it was Sutra lecture time every day, he didn't talk about enlightenment. What he talked about was Gong De, Fu De, Zhi Hui, Ci Bei. He talked about merit and virtue and blessings, wisdom, compassion. Those are the things he talked about. And he talked a lot about facing your own character flaws. It was like, I came to get enlightened. Why are you talking about greed, anger, and delusion and pointing at me, Shifu? And it was not at all what I had expected, having read and using my consumer mind to think this is what Buddhism was about. And so why did this real Chan master, the real thing, Master Hua was holding the lineage. He's right from the Buddha. What he interpreted Buddhism was about, what he said was, it's about uncovering the virtues of your own nature. He said the Buddha is Wan De Bei, replete with all 10,000 virtues. And he would say, so are you, you just haven't uncovered them yet. Cultivation is a process of uncovering the virtues of your nature. It's a process of service, making others happy so that you can have blessings. How do you get blessings? What is fu de? What is fu qi? Fu bao, you would say. You would say making others happy, not spending your life exclusively trying to make yourself happy in every word and deed. Making others happy, you have blessings. Then things work out. He said you have to plant blessings, to cultivate blessings, just like putting money in the bank. And you can exhaust your blessings. You can be out of money, and then things don't go well. You apply for the scholarship and it doesn't come. You want to get the job and somebody else gets it. You buy a car, it turns out that it needs lots of money before it works. So that's the reality of no blessings. When you have blessings through service to others, through spending your time benefiting people as they can be helped, then you apply for the scholarship and it comes right in. You get the job, and the job, you get a call. You buy the car and the car just runs and runs and runs and runs. Because why? You have blessings in the bank. He said, this is what cultivation, this is what Buddhism is about. And then wisdom and compassion, that's what you cultivate with the Dharma. So blessings, let me try again. Virtue, that word, Virtue is in your nature, but you have to uncover it through meditation, through bowing. Samantabhadra's 10 practices. He said, blessings come from making others happy, from service to others, spending your time helping other people, being the member in the family who sticks around until the dishes are washed and the floor has been vacuumed and the place is back to where it was before you had the meeting. You clean up after the meeting. Right? You're that kind of reliable person. That's where blessings come from. Merit comes from hard work in being a better person. Wisdom, that is what arises from your study of the Dharma, you say. And cultivate to prajna, wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, which is the peak of the Bodhisattva's path. That comes from samadhi. You have to cultivate to realize samadhi. Wisdom arises like the mirror from the mind, polished by samadhi. Compassion comes from when you recognize that you're connected to everyone else. You always have been. And thinking that you're alone in this separate unit, that's seeing things the way they're not. That's not the way the world is. But with wisdom, you can see that. And then the ultimate of compassion is called tongti dabe, where you realize that you are one body with all living beings. That's the Bodhisattva's place. So Master Hua would talk like that, and I go, whoa, Shifu, this sounds like an entire college course, a college education in Dharma. He said, yeah, that's why it takes so long. What do you think? You thought you'd get enlightened in a weekend? Yeah, wet behind the ears, you say. Come and do some real Dharma. Like make the Buddha Dharma your life, and things will get better for you. And the Buddha Dharma will survive. So when we heard that, it was like, oh, well, that's different. So here it is. What does the sutra say? The sutra says, the Buddhas constantly praise and extol these bodhisattvas who are replete with the above treasury of boundless blessings and qualities. The Buddhists talk about these virtues in languages and expressions. They can't even, if they were trying to finish talking about them, say every one of them, couldn't. And all these bodhisattvas were there in the Jeta Grove. They were immersed in the Tathagata's ocean of virtues. They could see the Buddha's light shining upon them. Those individuals who left couldn't see the Buddha's light. They didn't know what was going on. So we would say, Shifu, why are you picking on my xi qi mao bing, my habits and faults? He said, because I'm not here to cheat you. That is the fastest way to enlightenment. He says, you don't have to add enlightenment to enlightenment. You're already awake, but you've covered it over with all of your habits and faults, your attachments, your delusions, your emotions, your afflictions. It's called ignorance. Get rid of that, and you're enlightened. That's why I'm poking at your habits and faults, because I really do want you to wake up now. He said, if I told you you need to get enlightenment, he said, I'm just adding one more affliction on top of the afflictions you already have, which are numerous. Okay, sure. So, yeah, it's not what I expected at all. Okay, what happens next? Take a look here. Bodhisattvas rejoice, and in every thought, they release clouds of light, clouds of bells, clouds of music, clouds of manifestation of vows, clouds of transformations, clouds of. That's next week. The Bodhisattvas release all these clouds, and they get a response from the Dharma because they get this light. Aha! At that time, Bodhisattva Manjushri, for the first time, he shows up. He chants verses. That'll be in 2 weeks. We'll get the Manjushri's verses, kind of announcing that he's coming. And people enter samadhi. They release light. Their bodies are like world rulers, and they start to respond to the Buddha's light. You can see all the different things that happen. This is going to take us a couple weeks to get through what happens when Manjushri starts to teach. we'll be going through that a lot. Then Bodhisattvas travel from where they're sitting to announce that the entering the Dharma realm chapter is about to happen. They appear, they manifest, they travel. So there's a lot coming, right? It's going to be, I keep teasing, saying that we're almost there. Manjushri is about to show up, and then Sudhana gets to show up too. Not yet, not yet. There's still more to go. Okay, in praising Bodhisattvas, I wanted to talk about this. I think maybe we'll first just enjoy it a little bit and then explain what we're doing here. Is that big enough? Can you see that, Ben? Too small. Too small. Yeah, make it bigger. There we go. This is currently, oh, no wonder. That better? That readable? Okay. This is in praise of one of those bodhisattvas. she'll give you a hand. Call her name and she'll give you a hand. Bodhisattva, she will hear your voice. Bodhisattva, she will hear your voice. Bodhisattva, she will hear your voice. Call her name and she will hear your voice. One in Bodhisattva rescues living beings. One in Bodhisattva rescues living beings. One in Bodhisattva rescues living beings. She made vow to rescue living beings. Okay, last chance, here we go. When your soul is weary, call on Guan Shi. When your soul is weary, call on Guan Shi. When your soul is weary, raise your voice and call on Guan Shi. Raise your voice and call on Guan Shi. So the idea is, what is, if you think about these bodhisattvas, who are, by the way, it's my indestructible steel body resonator. When the Buddha praises the bodhisattvas who are able to use all different languages and communicate with living beings according to their thoughts, put yourself in the shoes of a teacher like Master Hsuan Hua, who comes to the West from China speaking only Chinese and wants to plant Buddhism down in a new continent, in a new soil, in a new culture, in a way that will yield results that are correct, that won't get distorted by the pressures of a marketplace world. Right? America, Australia is a place where the marketplace rules. You know, we judge our worth by what we own, what we possess, not our inner qualities. As Dr. King said, I have a dream of a time when children will be valued by the contents of their nature, not the color of their skin. Here in Australia, The Voice, in October, that's coming up for a vote, whether we will amend the Constitution to allow First Nations peoples, the Aboriginals, and the Torres Strait Islanders a voice in their own self-determination. So we'll see. So here he is, and he wants to do that. And how is he going to do it? Number one, it takes a while before we learn to understand Master Hua's language. But he was such an incredible communicator. He was charismatic, and you just, in his presence, you were drawn in by. Now that I have seen other monks do it and read about it, I would say it's virtue. They say that Master Empty Cloud, Master Hua's teacher, could disarm you from the back. That there was just something radiating from him that made you open and receptive to what he wanted to share, even before he would say a word. You weren't even looking at him. He just radiated it from his person. Shifu Master Hua had that very same quality. So he would say to us, who is going to take responsibility for spreading the Buddha Dharma? You know it's good, but it relies on people. It doesn't teach itself. He said, to me particularly, he said, don't imitate me. Don't try to be an old Chinese man. You're never going to be Chinese. You have to use whatever you have in your own culture to get people to want to listen to the Dharma. Be creative. Use every skill you have. He said, you used to be in theater. Why haven't you written Buddhist plays and put them on the stage? He said. And yeah, sure, but that's right. You're lazy, that's why. 拖泥带水, he said. You're just dragging yourself through the mud. So it's hard. Here's the pressure. Here's the challenge. Can we really adopt the teachings of the Buddha into aspects of our culture, confident that we have not distorted the Dharma, the wisdom of the teachings? That's the knife's edge, the balance point. And it takes a while. Here are two other places where we can see that dynamic at work. One is ceremonies. As monastics, we spend 2.5 hours minimum every day in the ceremony hall doing ceremonies, doing the chanting. And it came to us in forms that had been celebrated in China for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. The ceremonies that we do every day likely came into form in the Song Dynasty, the 1200s. Master Hua said to us over and over, he said, 你们赶快把早晚课反成西方人可以接近可以唱的早晚课. He said, quickly, do it now, 赶快. He said, do it right away. Translate those ceremonies into forms that Westerners can approach and can do. They're not going to sing Chinese music. He said, besides, the ceremonies that you do are not actually Chinese. They're some hybrid. Chinese monks and nuns come over and listen to what you're doing here, and they go, 不对，不是这样子. It's not right. He said, you're already doing a hybrid form of Chinese ceremonies. Why don't you dump them and do something that Westerners do? So we've tried. Last year, not even this year, it was this year earlier, we're now in September. Earlier this year, here at the Gold Coast, we did a very creditable English language Great Compassion Repentance. We did it. And it was hard work. We had to really look at the ceremonies, and it takes skill. It takes musical skill. It takes courage, most of all, to say, we're going to commit to these non-Chinese ceremonies based upon Chinese ceremonies, and just hope that we're getting the Dharma correct. But the form, the outside, has to change. When it's done right, for sure, our nature is going to go, oh, that spoke to me. I kind of like that. That's mine. I can approach that. I don't have to stand in the bench and go, Namo, Sad, Namo, Namo, Vanya, Namo, without knowing what it is. So that's one. Number two is robes, for example. This robe that I'm wearing right now is a Tang Dynasty robe. It's a Tang Dynasty ceremonial robe. And this has nothing to do with Buddhism. This is just a Chinese robe that monks in China have worn traditionally. The power of that word, tradition. Anybody who's seen Fiddler on the Roof, you know, tradition. That word is very oppressive when it's used wrongly. Tradition is something that you can depend on, rely on, right? Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. Oh my goodness. If you lose your tradition, you don't know who you are, is the fear. So Master Hua was there saying, don't be afraid. You're not going to lose tradition. Tradition is evolution. The Chinese did not do Indian ceremonies. They changed them to make them Chinese. You have to do the same. That is tradition. Buddhism has changed, has survived 2,500 years because people were bold enough. They trusted in their wisdom enough to change to the new. Okay, I'm back. Hi there. Sorry about that. Not your fault, our fault here. So just to say that in the West, we have robes that we can wear to adapt to our climate, to our culture, that will allow us to work. Chinese robes are not that suitable for working. That allows you to sit in a car with a seatbelt on. Those robes are awful. These robes don't work with seatbelts, etc. The shoes need to change. The clothing needs to change. So tradition is found in the changing. So just to say, singing Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name to Mississippi John Hurt's rhythms, I think works. I think that's that and what's ahead for us. So it takes a lot of courage to follow instructions. Master Hua was fearless, and he pushed us to do that work, and we're on the way, but we can't be afraid of the criticism that will come from those folks who only know tradition, who didn't hear Master Hua's encouragement, who maybe have no investment in keeping the Dharma alive in the West for Westerners, the way he did. So just to say, fear not. We need to continue to follow instructions and innovate. That way, the exhortations of the Buddha for the Bodhisattvas in the Avatamsaka Sutra can get some wind in those sails, and we can move towards the Bodhisattvas that we admire and that we want to become in the future. Alrighty, funny that our modem timed out just at the last 7 minutes. So I see that Jinwei Shi is here. And let me share my screen and go out to our website. Hi, Jinwei Shi, Amitofo.
Amitofo, hello, Dharma Master, hello, everyone. Like every Saturday, we have a few announcements here from Berkeley. And I'm very glad to announce that our new semester, autumn semester, begins at here an extension debut classes at Berkeley. Some of them, unfortunately, still in Zooms, not in person. First one is Dharma, so you can go up. Is Stephen Taylor.
Stephen Tainer, here we are.
Right. Actually, he tried to exactly Dharmaster do and bridging what you explained, how to make a sense of this ancient teaching and how can match to our current modern conditions. And he offered series of classes which talking about virtue, how to live life, beautiful life, so to speak. And the class is on Wednesday, 7:30 to 8:45 p.m. and you can just join the Zoom.
Okay, let me translate. In Australia, in Taiwan, in Australia, that is 12:30 in the afternoon. In Taiwan, in Hong Kong, that's 10:30 a.m. on Thursday for Stephen Tainer's class, free of charge.
Exactly. And the next one is, I guess it's Dharma Master yours class on every Friday. Is the Rabbi Heng is going over the biography of Dharma Master Shuyun, Empty Cloud. And it's also over Zoom from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. California time.
Okay.
And you have to register for this particular series of lectures.
Send an email and we'll send you the link. This is available on Zoom, so folks in Buddhist Asia can log on. This is 6 a.m. Saturday morning here in Australia, 4 a.m. in China and Taiwan. So for those of you who are very vigorous, welcome.
Exactly. And here we have this, not tomorrow, but the next Sunday, we'll have our monthly transfer of merit and virtue from the monthly recitation of Great Compassion Mantra. 6:30, we will recite Dabejo 21 times and offer some short reflections and dedicate the merit. And we gather community and from many countries and continents all together comes once a month and transfer merit and virtue from our cultivation. And I know many people put a lot of heart and reciting since pandemic begins. One of the responses for people, how we can create and send a good kind of vibes, how to can heal the current situation in the world. And still going on. You can join if you wish. You can sign up and be the part of this Great Compassion Mantra community.
Okay, great.
And tomorrow we have another class, but to join that, we have a link here. It's in fact in the City of 10,000 Buddhas YouTube channel, and it's also Avatamsaka Sutra, 7:30 p.m. California time.
This one right here. There it is.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry,
Tomorrow.
that's 12:30. 12:30 noon. That's Monday, 12:30 noon here in Australia. It's 10:30 in the morning in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. It's the Avatamsaka Sutras, 10 transferences. It's bilingual. I do it in both English and Chinese. We also tell the story of Master Shenzang, our great pilgrim and hero in the Chinese Mahayana. There's a Vietnamese translation. It's live streamed on YouTube, and there is a Zoom link. Alrighty.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here.
And the first Tuesday of our monks, but it has still a few weeks to go. The first Tuesday on October will be, I see here, it will be October 3rd. when we have some guests from our Thai Forest Sangha monastery. And of course, every day we start the day with recitation of Shurangama mantra and other mantras. The morning ceremony, 4 a.m., is streamed from our Buddha hall here at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, as well as evening ceremony at 6:30. And those who like to recite the Buddha's name, they can also join the online recitation from 12:30 to 1 from Monday to Thursday.
All righty. All right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to also talk about what is happening here at Gold Coast Dharma Realm. Sam, where do I go? Events? Buddhist calendar or calendar?
Just scroll down the page.
Okay. Home?
Yeah, and then scroll down. Scroll down. Just
Scroll down. Okay. Here we are. Let's see here. Yes. So there's a lot here. We're installing new Guanyin Bodhisattva images in the Buddha Hall, in our new hall, taking sponsorships now, should you care to sponsor an image. These are the details right here. We are about to engage in the Thousand Buddha Repentance. That is coming up on the 29th of September, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 3 days. There is also Shurangama Mantra Recitation Retreat, Guanyin Bodhisattva's Recitation Retreat, Amitabha, and on to the new year. So this is available to everybody at gcdr.org.au. Gold Coast Dharma Realm, gcdr.org.au. Very nice website, available to everybody to come take a look. Okay, here we are. And to conclude today, dedicate our merit, invite everybody to join, make a wish, something that you would like to have happen in the world. In Judaism, we say, tikkun olam, we repair the world. The world needs repairing, by golly. So it only gets repaired by your wishes, one thought at a time. So let's make a wish, make a better world. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. This boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and one. And we'll conclude by bowing to the Buddhas 3 times. You're welcome to join. Go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, that's going to do it for us for today. See you all next week. Amitofo. Bye-bye now.